The Radio Memories Network is brought to you in part by Liberated Syndication, podcast publishing made easy, libsyn.com. That's libsyn.com.
Welcome to the Old Time Radio Network Adventures. What adventures awaits our heroes? Let's go back to the early days of radio and our imaginations to our featured presentation.
Good evening and welcome to Sunday Showcase. I'm Damiano Pietropaolo. Tonight, we continue with our dramatization of Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, a special CBC co-production with BBC Radio 4. Jim, a runaway slave, seeks freedom down the Mississippi in the town of Cairo. But beyond the town lie the slave territories of the Deep South. And Jim's traveling buddy, Huck, is having pangs of conscience. He wonders if he should be returning Jim to his slave owner rather than helping him escape. Here now is episode 2 of our special presentation of Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, starring Martin Roach and Christopher Jacot.
Huckleberry Finn, son of the town drunkard, has run away from his persecuting father and from a persecuting good widow who wishes to make a nice, truth-telling, respectable boy of him. Huck and a runaway slave named Jim have found a fragment of a lumber raft and are floating down the Mississippi by night and hiding in the willows by day. One night, while exploring a wrecked steamboat on the river, Huck comes upon a trio of thieves arguing over the division of their loot. He overhears two members of the gang planning to murder the third man.
Well, I catched my breath and most fainted. Shut up on a wreck with such a gang as that. But it weren't no time to be sentimental. Jim, we've got to find that boat now before the thieves get it.
This deck's too slippery for me, huh?
Hang on to the shutters.
Well, what do you think I'm doing?
Jim, there's the skiff. In a half second, I was in the boat, and Jim come a-tumbling after me. I out with my knife and cut the rope, and away we went.
Look, see that light yonder?
It's the scoundrels, Jim. They're up on deck looking for the skiff.
They know for sure they's in trouble now.
After a long time, the rain let up, but the lightning kept whimpering. And by, a flash showed us a black thing ahead floating, and we made for it. It was the raft. Mighty glad was we to get aboard of it again. The skiff was half full of plunder which that gang had stole there on the wreck. We hustled it onto the raft in a pile, and before long here comes the steamboat sliding along down. A kind of cold shiver went through me, and then I struck out for her. She was very deep, and I see in a minute there weren't much chance for anybody being alive in her. Hello? Anybody there? Anybody hear me? The sky was beginning to get a little gray in the east, so we struck for an island and hid the raft and sunk the skiff and turned in and slept like dead people. Next morning, we turned over the truck the gang had stole off the wreck and found boots and blankets and a lot of books and a spyglass and 3 boxes of cigars. We had never been this rich before, in neither of our lives. The cigars was prime. We laid off all afternoon in the woods talking, and me reading considerable to Jim about the kings and dukes and earls and such, and how gaudy they dressed and how much style they put on.
I didn't know there was so many of them. I ain't heard about none of them. How much do a king get?
Get? Why, they get $1,000 a month if they want it. They can have just as much money as they want. Everything belongs to them.
Ain't that gay? Now what they got to do, Huck?
They don't do nothing. Why, how you talk? They just sit around.
No. Is that so?
Of course it is. They just sit around. Except maybe when there's a war. Then they go to war. But the other times, they just lazy around or go hawking. Just hawking. Shh. You hear something?
Ain't nothing but the flood of a steamboat's wheel away down come around the point. Hey, go on with the royalty, Huck.
Well, when things is dull, they fuss with the parliament. And if everybody don't go just so, the king whacks their heads off. But mostly they hang around the harem.
Round the which?
Harem.
What's the harem?
Place where the king keeps his wives. Don't you know about the harem? Solomon had one. He had about 1 million wives.
Why, yeah, that's so. I done forgot it. They say Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived. But he had some of the dad-fetchest ways I ever see. Does you know about that child that he was going chopping too?
Yes, the widow told me all about it.
Well, then, weren't that the beatin'est notion in the world? Yeah. That's the stump there. That's one of the women. Here's you. That's the other one. I's Solomon, and this here dollar bill's the child. Both of you claims it. What does I do? Does I shine around amongst the neighbors and find out which of you the bill do belong to and hand it over to the right one all safe and sound? No, I take and whack the bill in two and give half of it to you and the other half to the other woman. Now, I want to ask you, what's the use of that half a bill? Can't buy nothing with it. And what's the use of half a child?
Well, hang it, Jim, you clean missed the point.
Who, me? Go long. Don't talk to me about your points. I reckon I knows what I knows. And mind you, the real point is down further. It's down deeper. See, it lays in the way Solomon was raised. You take a man that's got only 1 or 2 children. Is that man going to be wasteful of children? No, he ain't. He can't afford it. He know how to value them. But you take a man that's got 5 million children running out of the house, then it's different. He as soon chop a child in two as a cat. There's plenty more.
I never seen such a nigger. If he got a notion in his head once, there weren't no getting it out again. So I went to talking about other kings and let Solomon slide. I told about Louis XVI that got his head cut off in France long time ago, and about his little boy the Dolphin that would have been a king, but they shut him up in jail, and some say he died there.
Poor little chap.
Some say he got out and got away and come to America.
That's good. But he be pretty lonesome. There ain't no kings here, is there, Huck?
No.
Then he can't get no situation. What's he going to do?
Well, I don't know. Some of them gets on the police, and some of them learns people how to talk French.
Why, Huck, don't the French people talk the same way we does?
No, Jim. You couldn't understand a word they say, not a single word. Suppose a man was to come to you and say, "Parlez-vous Français?" What would you think?
I wouldn't think nothing. I'd take and bust him over the head.
Shucks, he ain't calling you anything. He's only saying, do you know how to talk French?
Well, why couldn't he say it?
Why, he is a saying it. That's a Frenchman's way of saying it.
Well, it's a blame ridiculous way. There ain't no sense in it.
Looky here, Jim. Does a cat talk like we do?
No, a cat don't.
Well, does a cow?
No, a cow don't neither.
Does a cat talk like a cow or a cow talk like a cat?
No, they don't.
And ain't it natural and right for a cow and a cat to talk different from us?
Why, most surely is.
Well then, why ain't it natural and right for Frenchmen to talk different from us? You answer me that.
Is a cat a man, Huck?
No.
Well, then there ain't no sense in a cat talking like a man. Is a cow a man? Is a cow a cat?
No, she ain't either of them.
Well, then she ain't got no business to talk like either of them. Is a Frenchman a man?
Yes.
Well, then, Dad, blame it. Why don't he talk like a man? You answer me that.
I see it weren't no use wasting words. You can't learn a nigger to argue. So I quit. Well, the following night a fog begun to come on, and we made for a towhead to tie the raft to. When I paddled ahead in the canoe, there weren't anything but little saplings to tie to. I passed the line of the raft around one of them, right on the edge of the cut bank, but there was a stiff current, and the raft with Jim on it come booming down so lively she tore it out by the roots and away she went. Jim! Jim, slow down!
Can't slow it down. Huck? Where are you?
I see the fog closing down, and it made me so sick and scared I couldn't budge for most half a minute. And then there weren't no raft in sight. You couldn't see 20 yards. I took out after the raft in the canoe, hot and heavy, but I shot out into the solid white fog and had no more idea which way I was going than a dead man. Woo! I kept quiet, with my ears cocked about 50 minutes, I reckon. If you think it ain't dismal and lonesome out in the fog that way by yourself in the night, you try it once. You'll see. Woo! Well, I seemed to be in the open river again by and by. I reckon Jim had fetched up on a snag maybe, and it was all up with him. I was good and tired, so I lay down in the canoe and said I wouldn't bother no more. I was so sleepy, I thought I would take just one little cat nap. But I reckon it was more than a cat nap, for when I waked up, the stars was shining bright. The fog was all gone, and I was spinning down a big bend stern first. It was a monstrous big river here, with the tallest and thickest timber on both banks. I looked away downstream and seen a black speck on the water. But when I got to it, it weren't nothing but a couple of saw logs made fast together. Then I see another speck, and I chased that. Then another, and this time I was right. It was the raft. When I got to it, Jim was sitting there with his head down between his knees asleep, with his right arm hanging over the steering oar. The other oar was smashed off. The raft was littered up with leaves and branches and dirt, so she'd had a rough time. Hello, Jim. I've been asleep. Why didn't you stir me up?
Goodness gracious, is that you, Huck? And you ain't dead? You ain't drowned? You's back again. It's too good for true, honey. It's too good for true.
What's the matter with you, Jim?
Let me look at you, child. Let me feel of you. No, you ain't dead. You's live and sound, just the same old Huck. Thanks to goodness.
You been a drinking, Jim?
Drinking? Has I had a chance to be a drinking?
Then what makes you talk so wild?
How does that talk wild?
How? Ain't you been talking about my coming back as if I'd been gone away?
Huck? Huck Finn, you look me in the eye. Look me in the eye. Ain't you been gone away?
Gone away? Ain't been gone anywheres. Where would I go to?
Well, looky here, boss. You answer me this. Didn't you tow out the line in the canoe for to make fast to the towhead?
No, I didn't. What towhead? I ain't seen no towhead.
You ain't seen no towhead? Looky here. Didn't the line pull loose and the raft go a-humming down the river and leave you in the canoe behind in the fog?
What fog?
Why the fog? And didn't you whoop? And didn't I whoop till we got mixed up in the islands? And didn't I have a terrible time and most get drowned?
Well, this is too much for me, Jim. I ain't seen no fog, nor no island, nor no troubles, nor nothing. I've been sitting here talking with you all night till you went to sleep about 10 minutes ago. You must have been dreaming.
Dad, fetch it. How's I going to dream all that in 10 minutes?
Well, hang it all. You did dream it because there didn't any of it happen.
Is that so? In that case, if it's a dream, I must start in and interpret it.
Go ahead, Jim.
Them towheads was troubles we was going to get into with quarrelsome people and all kinds of mean folks. But if we mind our business and don't aggravate them, Huck, we're going to pull true and get out of the fog and into the big clear river, which is the free states. And there won't be no more trouble.
That's well enough, Jim. But what about all these leaves and rubbish? And this smashed door? What do they stand for? Jim looked at the trash and then looked at me and back at the trash again. He had got the dream fixed so strong in his head that he couldn't seem to shake it loose. But when he did get things straightened around, he looked at me steady, without ever smiling.
What do they stand for, Huck? I was going to tell you. When I got all wore out with work, and with the calling for you and went to sleep, my heart was most broke because you was lost. And I didn't care no more what became of me or the raft. And when I wake up and find you back again, all safe and sound, the tears come and I could have got down on my knees and kissed your foot. I was so thankful. And all you was thinking about was how you could have made a fool of old Jim with a lie. That truck there on the raft is trash. And trash is what people is that puts dirt on the head of their friends and make them ashamed.
Then he got up slow and went to the wigwam without saying anything but that. But that was enough. It was 15 minutes before I could work myself up to go and humble myself to a nigger. But I'd done it, and I weren't ever sorry for it afterwards neither. We judged that 3 nights more would fetch us to Cairo at the bottom of Illinois, where the Ohio River comes in, and that was where we was after. We would sell the raft and get on a steamboat and go way up the Ohio amongst the free states, and then be out of trouble.
Huck, do you reckon we's gonna recognize Cairo when we get to it?
Likely we won't, Jim. I heard say there weren't but a dozen houses there. And if they don't happen to be lit up, how is we gonna know we's passing a town?
Well, if the 2 big rivers join together there, that would show.
You reckon?
Stands to reason.
Looky there, Jim. Now that's what you call a raft.
Must be 30 men or more.
2, 3, 5 wigwams, Jim. An open campfire and a flagpole at each end.
Awful stylish.
There she goes.
Huck, I tell you what. It's such a black night, it won't be no risk for you to swim down to the big raft and listen. They sure to talk about Cairo. They'll be calculating to go ashore there full spree.
Jim could almost always start a good plan when you wanted one. So I shook my rags off and jumped into the river and struck out for the raft slide. By and by, when I got down nearly to her, I eased up and went slow and cautious. But everything was all right. Nobody at the sweeps, so I crawled aboard and inched along and got in amongst some bundles of shingles on the weather side of the fire. There was 13 men on deck there, and a mighty rough-looking lot, too.
There was an old woman in our town she did dwell. She loved her husband dearly, but another man twice as well. Singing to-ra-lo-ra-lo-ra, ra-to-ra-lo-ra-ree. Singing to-ra-lo-ra-lo-ra, ra-to-ra-lo-ra-ree. We heard all we need to. That's the tune the old town died on. We heard all we need to. She went down to the doctor's shop to see what she could find, to see if she could find anything to make her old man blind. Singing to-ra-lo-ra-lo-ra, ra-to-ra-lo-ra-ree. Singing to-ra-lo-ra-lo-ra, ra-to-ra-lo-ra-ree. You watch it. I can lam any teeth here. Man's got a right to sing. Hey, let's give him a midnight swim. Yeah. 14 against 1. I like them all.
They was all about to make a break for him, but the biggest man there jumped up and says,
"Sit where you are, gentlemen. Leave him to me. He's my meat."
Then he jumped up in the air 3 times and cracked his heels together. He flung off a buckskin coat that was all hung with fringes and flung his hat down, which was all over ribbons.
Woo! I'm the original iron-jawed, brass-mounted, copper-bellied corpse maker from the wilds of Arkansas. Look at me! I'm the man they call sudden death and general desolation. Sired by a hurricane, damned by an earthquake, half-brother to the cholera, nearly related to the smallpox on the mother's side. Look at me! I take 19 alligators and a barrel of whiskey for breakfast when I'm in robust health, and a bushel of rattlesnakes and a dead body when I'm ailing. Whee! Stand back and give me room according to my strength. Blood's my natural drink, and the wails of the dying is music to my ear. Lay low, gentlemen, and hold your breath, for I'm about to turn myself loose.
All the time he was getting this off, he was shaking his head and looking fierce and kind of swelling around in a little circle. Then the man that started the row, the original singer, he tilted his old slouch hat over his right eye, then he bent stooping forwards, with his back sagged and his south end sticking out far, and his fists a-shoving out and drawn in. Then he straightened and jumped up and cracked his heels together 3 times.
Bow your neck and spread, for the kingdom of sorrows a comin'. Hold me down to earth, for I feel my powers are working. I'm a child of sin. Don't let me get a start. Smoked glass here for all. Don't attempt to look at me with the naked eye, gentlemen. When I'm playful, I use the meridians of longitude and latitude for the Seine and drag the Atlantic Ocean for whales. When I'm cold, I bile the Gulf of Mexico and bathe in it. When I'm hot, I fan myself with an equinoctial storm. When I'm thirsty, I reach up and suck a cloud dry like a sponge. Contemplate me through leather. Don't use the naked eye. The massacre of isolated communities is the pastime of my idle moments. The destruction of nationalities, the serious business of my life. The boundless vastness of the great American desert is my enclosed property, and I bury my dead on my own premises. Bow your head and spread. For the pet child of calamities are coming.
Then the other one went to swilling around and blowing again. The first one, the one they called Bob. Next, the child of calamity chipped in again, bigger than ever. Then they both got at it at the same time, punching their fists most into each other's faces and whooping and jawing like Indians. Both of them was edging away in different directions, growling and shaking their heads and going on about what they was gonna do. But then a little black-whiskered chap skips up and says,
"Come back here, you couple chicken liver cowards, and I'll thrash the 2 of you."
And he done it, too.
Come here, you...
He snatched them, he jerked them this way and that, he booted them around, he knocked them, sprawling faster than they could get up. Why, it weren't 2 minutes till they begged like dogs. Well, it was a perfect powwow for a while. Bob and the child had red noses and black eyes when they got through.
Come on, you 2. Own up that you's both sneaks and cowards, and not fit to eat with a dog, or drink with a nigger.
Well, I've always respected you, Davy.
And I've always respected Bob here.
Come on now. Let bygones be bygones, huh?
If you're willing, then I am.
So then they went and washed their faces in the river. They got to talking about differences betwixt hogs and their different kinds of habits, and next about women and their different ways, and next about the best ways to put out houses that was afire, and what ought to be done with the engines, and about what a king had to do, and how much he got, and how to make cats fight, and what to do when a man has fits, and next about differences betwixt clear water rivers and muddy water ones.
Well, muddy Mississippi water is wholesomer to drink than your clear Ohio water.
That's so. There's nutritiousness in the Mississippi mud.
Look at the graveyards. That tells the tale. Trees won't grow worth shucks in the Cincinnati graveyard, but in the St. Louis graveyard, they grow upwards of 800 foot high.
That's on account of the water the people drunk before they laid up. A Cincinnati corpse don't rich in a soil any.
And those rivers don't like to mix.
Well, why should the thick, yaller Mississippi allow itself to be contaminated by all that clear Ohio water?
That's what I say. Come on, boys. We'll split a watermelon on that.
The child of calamity come rummaging around in the dark amongst the shingle bundles where I was and put his hand on me. I was warm and soft and naked, so he jumps back.
Fetch a lantern, boys. There's a snake here as big as a cow.
Come out of that, you beggar.
A cussed thief. Lend a hand and let's heave him overboard.
Yeah. No. Let's get out a paint pot and paint him sky blue all over from head to heel, and then heave him over.
That's it. Go for the paint, Jimmy.
Please, no, sir.
Leave off.
He's nothing but a cub. I'll paint the man that touches him. Now, come here to the fire. Give an account of yourself. How long have you been aboard here?
Not over a quarter of a minute, sir.
How'd you get dry so quick?
I don't know, sir. I'm always that way, mostly.
Oh, you are you? Well, what's your name?
Alec Hopkins, sir. Alec James Hopkins.
Well, Alec, where do you come from?
From a trading scow. She lays up the bend yonder. I was born on her. Papa's traded up and down here all his life, and he told me to swim off here when you went by because he would like to get some of you to speak to Mr. Jonas Turner in Cairo and tell him that we...
Oh, come.
Yes, sir. It's as true as the world. Pappy says...
Oh, your grandmother. Now, looky here. You're scared, and so you talk wild. Honest now, do you live in a scow, or is it a lie?
Yes, sir. In a scow. But I wasn't born in her. It's our first trip.
Now you're talking. What'd you come aboard here for? To steal?
No, sir. It was only to get a ride on the raft. All boys does that.
Well, we know that. But what did you hide for?
Sometimes they drive the boys off.
So they do. They might steal. Look at here. If we let you off this time, will you keep out of these kind of scrapes hereafter?
Oh, deed I will, boss. You try me.
All right, then. Overboard with you. Blast it, boy. Some harassment would rawhide you till you were black and blue.
I didn't wait to kiss goodbye, but went overboard and broke for shore. When Jim come along by and by, the big raft was away out of sight around the point. I swum out and got aboard our little raft and was mighty glad to see home again. Nothing to do now but to look out sharp for Cairo and not pass it without seeing it.
I'm mighty sure to see it, Huck, because I'll be a free man the minute I sees it. And if I miss it, I'll be in slave country and no more show for freedom. Huck, there's Cairo. Them lights over there.
That's not Cairo, Jim. Them's jack-o'-lanterns or lightning bugs.
You's right, Huck. You's right. I'm so close to freedom now, eyes all over trembly and feverish.
Well, I can tell you it made me all over trembly and feverish, too, to hear him, because I begun to get it through my head that Jim was most free. And who's to blame for it? Why, me. I couldn't get that out of my conscience, no how nor no way. It hadn't ever come home to me before what this thing was that I was doing, but now it did. And it stayed with me. It scorched me more and more. Conscience says to me, what had poor Miss Watson done to you, that you could see her nigger go off right under your eyes and never say a word? What did that poor old woman do to you that you could treat her so mean? Why, she tried to learn you your book. She tried to learn you your manners. She tried to be good to you every way she learned how. That's what she done. I fidgeted up and down the raft, abusing myself to myself, and Jim was fidgeting up and down past me every time he danced around and says, "That's Cairo." It went through me like a shot. I thought if it was Cairo, I reckon I would die of miserableness.
First things I was going to do when I get to a free state, I was going to save up my money, never spend one single cent. And then when I gets enough, I was going to buy my wife. She's on a farm close to Miss Watson's, and then we both going to get work and buy 2 children, boy and a girl. And if the master won't sell 'em, we's going to get an abolitionist to go and steal 'em.
It most froze me to hear such talk. He would never dare to talk such talk in his life before. Thinks I, this is what comes of my not thinking. Here was this nigger which I had as good as helped to run away, coming right out flat-footed and saying he would steal his children. Children that belonged to a man I didn't even know. A man that had never done me no harm. I was sorry to hear Jim say that. It was such a lowering of him. My conscience got to stirring me up hotter than ever, until at last I says to it, "Let up on me. It ain't too late yet. I'll paddle ashore at first light and tell." I felt easy and happy and light as a feather right off. All my troubles was gone. I went looking out sharp for a light, and by one showed.
We safe, Huck. We safe. Jump up and crack your heels. That's the good old Cairo at last. I just knows it.
I'll take the canoe and go see, Jim. It mightn't be, you know.
You do that, Huck. Pretty soon I'll be a shouting for joy, and I'll say, it's all on account of old Huck. I was a free man, and I couldn't have ever been free if it hadn't been for Huck. Huck done it. Jim won't ever forget you, Huck. He was the best friend Jim's ever had. And he was the only friend old Jim's got now.
I was paddling off all in a sweat to tell on him. When he says this, it seems to kind of take the tuck out of me. When I was 50 yards out, Jim says,
"There you goes. The old true Huck. The only white gentleman that ever kept his promise to old Jim."
Well, I just felt sick. But I says, I gotta do it. I can't get out of it. Right then along come a skiff with 2 men in it, with guns. And they stopped, and I stopped.
You there! What's that yonder? A piece of a raft. Do you belong on it?
Yes, sir. And a man on it. Only one, sir.
Well, there's 5 niggers run off tonight up yonder above the head of the bend. Is your man white or black?
He's white.
Well, I reckon we'll go and see for ourselves.
Oh, I wish you would, because it's Pop that's there. And maybe you'll help me tow the raft ashore where the light is. He's sick, and so is Ma'am and Mary Ann.
Oh, the devil! We're in a hurry, boy, but I suppose we've got to.
Oh, Pep will be mighty much obliged to you. I can tell you. Everybody goes away when I want them to help me tow the raft ashore.
Say, boy, what's the matter with your father?
It's the, well, it ain't nothing much.
Boy, that's a lie. Now, what is the matter with your pap? Answer up square now.
I will, honest. But don't leave us, please. It's the... Gentlemen, if you'll only let me heave you the headline, you won't have to come near the raft, but please do.
Set her back, John, set her back!
Keep away, boy, keep the lure. Confound it, your pap's gone and got the smallpox, and you know it fresh as well. Why didn't you come out and say so?
Well, I've told everybody before, and they just went away and left us.
Oh, poor devil. There's something in that. We are right down sorry for you, but well, hang it, we don't want the smallpox, see? Look here, I'll tell you what to do. You float along down about 20 miles, and you'll come to a town on the left-hand side of the river. But when you ask for help, you tell them your folks are all down with the chills and fever. Here, I'll put a $20 gold piece on this here board, and you'll get it when it floats by.
Hold on there, Parker. Here's 20 to put on the board for me. Goodbye, boy. If you see any runaway niggers, you get help and nab them. You can make some money by it.
Goodbye, sir. I won't let no runaway niggers get by me if I can help it.
I got aboard the raft feeling bad and low, because I knowed very well I had done wrong. And I see it weren't no use for me to try to learn to do right. A body that don't get started right when he's little ain't got no show. Then I thought a minute and says to myself, hold on, suppose you'd have done right and give Jim up. Would you felt better than what you do now? No, I says, I'd feel bad. I'd feel just the same way I do now. So then I reckon I wouldn't bother no more about it. But after this, always do whichever comes handiest at the time. Jim?
Here he is, Huck. Don't talk loud.
He was in the river under the stern oar with just his nose out.
Out of sight, Jim.
Lawsy, how did you fool him, Huck? That was the smartest dodge. I tell you, child, I expect you save old Jim. Old Jim ain't gonna forget you for that, honey.
Give me money, Jim. Look, $20 apiece.
Oh, when we gets to Cairo, Huck, we can take deck passage on a steamboat. These dollars will last us as far as we want to go in the Free States.
Towards daybreak, we tied up. Jim worked all day fixing things in bundles and getting all ready to quit rafting. That night we passed another town, and I was going out to ask about it, but it was high ground. No high ground about Cairo, Jim said. I had forgot it. We laid up for the day on a towhead tolerable close to the left-hand bank. I begun to suspicion something. So did Jim.
Jim? Maybe we went by Cairo in the fog that night.
Don't let's talk about it, Huck. Poor niggas can't have no luck.
When it was daylight, here was the clear Ohio water and shore, and outside was the old regular Mississippi muddy. So it was all up with Cairo.
What do you reckon we do now, Huck?
Well, it won't do to take to the shore, not while we're deep in slave country. We can't take the raft upstream. I reckon we wait for dark, Jim, and start back in the canoe and take our chances.
That's what I reckon, too.
We slept all day amongst the cottonwood thicket so as to be fresh for the work. And when we went back to the raft about dark, the canoe was gone. We didn't say a word for a good while. But by and by, we found there weren't no way but just to go along down with the raft till we got a chance to buy a canoe to go back in. Well, the night got gray and rather thick, which is the next meanest thing to fog. You can't tell the shape of the river, and you can't see no distance.
Steamboat up ahead.
Light the lantern, Jim. She's bound to see us.
Lantern's lit, Huck. Lordy, she's aiming right at us.
Often they do that, Jim. Trying to see how close she can come without touching.
She's going to touch us if she don't slow down.
Trying to shave us. She'll bite off one of the oars, then the pilot will stick his head out and laugh at us. And he'll think he's mighty smart.
She's not a-shaving us, Huck. I don't think she's seen us.
She was a big one. And she was coming in a hurry, too. Looking like a black cloud with rows of glowworms round it. All of a sudden, she bulged out, big and scary, with a long row of wide-open furnace doors shining like red-hot teeth, and her monstrous bows and guards hanging right over us. I dived and aimed to find the bottom, too, for a 30-foot wheel had to go over me, and I wanted it to have plenty of room. I could always stay underwater a minute. This time I reckon I stayed under a minute and a half. Then I bounced for the top in a hurry, for I was nearly busted. Of course that boat started her engines again 10 seconds after she stopped them, but they never cared much for raftsmen.
Jim! Jim! Jim, can you hear me?
I grabbed a plank that touched me when I was treading water and struck out for shore, shoving it ahead of me. I made a safe landing and clumb up the bank. I couldn't see but a little ways, but I went poking along over rough ground for a quarter of a mile or more. And then I run across a big old-fashioned double log house before I noticed it. I was going to rush by and get away. I know better than to move another pack.
Be done, boys! Who's there?
It's me.
Who's me?
George Jackson, sir.
What are you prowling around here this time of night for, hey?
I weren't prowling around, sir. I fell overboard off the steamboat.
Oh, you did you? Strike a light there, somebody. What did you say your name was?
George Jackson, sir. I'm only a boy.
Look here. If you're telling the truth, you needn't be afraid. Nobody'll hurt you. But don't try to budge. Stand right where you are. Rouse out Bob and Tom, some of you, and fetch the guns. George Jackson, is there anybody with you?
No, sir. Nobody.
Oh, snap that light away, Betsy, you old fool. Ain't you got no sense? Put it on the floor behind the front door. Bob, if you and Tom are ready, take your places.
All ready, Father.
Now, George Jackson, do you know the Shepherdsons?
No, sir. I never heard of them.
Well, that may be so, and it mayn't. Now, all ready? Step forward, George Jackson. Come slow. Push the door open yourself. Just enough to squeeze into here.
There. That's enough. Put your head in.
The candle was on the floor, and there they all was, looking at me at them. 3 big men with guns pointed at me, which made me wince, I tell you. The oldest, gray and about 60, and the other 2 30 or more. All of them fine and handsome, and the sweetest old gray-headed lady, and back of her 2 young women which I couldn't see right well.
There. I reckon it's all right. Come into the parlor. Why, he ain't a Shepherdson. No, there ain't no Shepherdson about him. Now, young man, you tell all about yourself.
Well, bless you, soul. The poor thing's as wet as he can be. And don't you reckon it maybe he's hungry?
True for you, Rachel. I forgot.
Betsy, you fly around and you get him something to eat, poor thing. And one of you girls, you go and wake up Buck and you oh, here he is himself. Buck, you take this little stranger and you get the wet clothes off from him and dress him up in some of yours that's dry.
Buck looked about as old as me, 13 or 14 or along there. Though he was a little bigger than me, he came in yawning and digging one fist into his eyes, and he was dragging a gun along with the other one.
Ain't they no Shepherdsons around?
No, boy. False alarm.
Well, if they'd have been some, I reckon I'd have got one.
Why, Buck, they might have scalped us all. You've been so slow coming down the stairs.
Well, nobody come after me. I'm always kept down. I don't get no show.
Never mind, Buck, my boy. You'll have show enough, all in good time. Don't you fret about that. Go along with you now, and do as your mother told you.
When we got upstairs to his room, Buck got me a coarse shirt and a short jacket and pants of his, and I put them on.
Say, George Jackson, where was Moses when the candle went out?
Oh, no. I never heard about it before.
Well, guess.
Well, which candle?
Why, any candle. Where was Moses?
I don't know. Where was he?
Why, he was in the dark. That's where he was.
Well, if you knowed where he was, why'd you ask me for?
What, blame it? It's a riddle, don't you see? Say, how long are you going to stay here? You got to stay always. We can just have booming times. They don't have no school now. Do you own a dog? I've got a dog, and he'll go in the river and bring out chips that you throw in. Are you ready? All right, come along, old boss.
Cold corn pone, cold corned beef, butter and buttermilk. That is what they had for me down there, and there ain't nothing better that I've ever come across yet. They all smoked and talked and asked me questions.
Well, Pop and me and all the family was living on a little farm down at the bottom of Arkansas. And my sister Mary Ann run off and got married and never was heard of no more. And Bill went to hunt them, and he weren't heard of no more. And Tom and Mort died, and then there weren't nobody but just me and Pat. And he was just trimmed down to nothing on account of his troubles. So when he died, I took what there was left and started up the river, deck passage, and kind of fell overboard.
Well, George, my boy, that's a mighty sad story. And you can have a home here with us as long as you want it.
There was another clan of aristocracy around there, 5 or 6 families of the name of Shepherdson. They was as high-toned and well-born and rich and grand as the tribe of Grangerfords. One day, Buck and me was away out in the woods hunting.
Quick, George, jump for cover! It's Harney Shepherdson, ain't it, Buck?
Quiet!
Darn! Missed. He shot off his hat, Buck! No need to rub it in.
Buck, he's coming this way!
Oh, come on, run! It's all right. He can't get us here.
Did you want to kill him, Buck?
I bet I did.
Why? What did Harney do to you?
Him? He never done nothing to me.
Well then, why'd you want to kill him for?
Why, nothing. Only it's on account of the feud.
What's the feud?
Why, where was you raised? Don't you know what a feud is?
Never heard of it before.
Well, a feud is this way. A man has a quarrel with another man and kills him. Then that other man's brother kills him. And then the other brothers on both sides goes for one another. Then the cousins chip in, and by everybody's killed off and there ain't no more feud. But it's kind of slow and it takes a long time.
Has this feud been going on long, Buck?
Well, I should reckon. It started 30 years ago. There was trouble about something, then a lawsuit to settle it. And the suit went again one of the men, so he up and shot the man that won the suit. Which he would naturally do, of course. Anybody would.
What was the trouble about, Buck? Land?
I reckon maybe. I don't know.
Who done the shooting? Was it a Grangerford or a Shepherdson?
Laws, how do I know? It was so long ago.
There been many killed, Buck?
Yes, right smart chance of funerals, but they don't always kill. Pa's got a few buckshot in him, Bob's been carved up some with a bowie, and Tom's been hurt once or twice.
Next Sunday, we all went to church, about 3 miles, everybody a horseback. The men took their guns along, so did Buck, and kept them between their knees or stood them handy against the wall. The Shepherdsons done the same. It was pretty ordinary preaching, all about brotherly love and such like tiresomeness, but everybody said it was a good sermon, and they all talked it over going home about faith and good works and free grace and pre-foredestination, that it did seem to me to be one of the roughest Sundays I had run across yet.
George, where's Buck, George?
He stretched out on the grass, Miss Sophia.
George, would you do me a great favor and not tell anyone?
Of course, Miss Sophia.
I forgot my testament. It's on my seat at church between 2 other books. Would you slip out quiet and fetch it for me? And don't mention it to anyone.
I slid out and slipped off up the road. There weren't anybody at the church. Says I to myself, something's up. It ain't natural for a girl to be in such a sweat about a testament. So I give it a shake, and out drops a little piece of paper with 2:30 wrote on it with a pencil. I ransacked it, but couldn't find anything else. So I put the paper in the book again, and when I got home and upstairs, there was Miss Sophia in her door waiting for me. She pulled me in and shut the door.
Thanks. You are the best boy in the world.
Miss Sophia, there was a paper in it.
Oh, that. Well, just a bookmark. You go and play now.
I went off down to the river, studying over this thing, and pretty soon I noticed that Jack, my nigger, was following along behind.
Master George, if you come down into the swamp, I'll show you a whole stack of water moccasins.
That's what you told me yesterday, Jack, and I told you I seen enough of those snakes in my time than to have to go hunting for them.
Please, Master George, if you shove into that swamp just a few steps, that's where they is.
Then Jack sloped away, and I poked into the swamp a ways, and come to a little open patch as big as a bedroom, all hung around with vines, and found a man lying there asleep. And by jings, it was my old Jim. I waked him up, and I reckon it was going to be a grand surprise to him to see me again. But it weren't.
I knowed you was with the Grangerfords, Huck. The niggers, they show me this place where the dogs can't track me on account of the water. And they brings me chuck to eat every night, and tells me how you was getting along.
Why didn't you tell my Jack to fetch me here sooner, Jim?
Well, I've been a-buying pots and pans and victuals as I got the chance, and patching up the raft nice.
What raft, Jim?
Our old raft.
You mean to say our old raft weren't smashed all to flinders?
She was tore up a good deal, but there weren't no great harm done. She all fixed up again, most good as new. We can light out again whenever you's ready.
I don't want to talk much about the next day. I waked up about dawn when I noticed how still it was. Didn't seem to be anybody stirring. Next I noticed that Buck was up and gone. Jack! What's going on, Jack? Where is everyone?
Don't you know, Master George? Miss Sophia run off to get married to that young Harney Shepardson. The family found it out about half hour ago, and I tell you, such another hurrying up of guns and horses you ain't never see. I reckon there's going to be mighty rough times.
I took up the river road as hard as I could put. When I come inside of the log store where the steamboats land, I worked along under the trees till I got to a good place, and then I clumb up into the forks of a cottonwood that was out of reach, and watched. There were 4 or 5 Shepherdsons cavorting around on their horses in the open place before the log store, trying to get a Buck and his cousin that was behind the woodpile. But they couldn't come it. By and by, the Shepherdsons stopped cavorting around and started riding towards the store. Then up gets Buck, draws a steady bead over the woodpile, and drops one of them out of the saddle. All the men jumped off their horses and grabbed the hurt one and started to carry him to the store.
I got him! Hope he's good and dead.
Buck! They're riding away, Buck!
George?
I'm up here, Buck!
You watch out sharp, George. Those men won't be gone long. Me and Cousin Joe will make up for this day yet. Father's killed, and Bob and Tom and 2 or 3 Shepherdsons. They laid for us in ambush. Cousin Joe and I will finish them off, don't you worry.
Buck, what about Harney and Miss Sophia?
They got across the river. They're safe. I should have shot Harney dead that day in the woods, George. I should have blowed his head off. Buck, the Shepherdson's behind you!
The boys jumped to the river, both of them hurt. I ain't gonna tell all that happened. It would make me sick again if I was to do that. I wished I had never come ashore that night to see such things. I ain't ever gonna get shut of them. Lots of times I dream about them. When I got down out of the tree, I crept along down the riverbank a piece and found the two bodies laying on the edge of the water and tugged at them till I got them ashore. I cried a little as I was covering up Buck's face, for he was mighty good to me. It was just dark now. I tramped off in a hurry for the creek, red hot to jump aboard and get out of that awful country. The raft was gone. My souls, but I was scared.
Jim! Can you hear me, Jim?
Is that you, honey? Don't make no noise. Laws bless you, child. I was right sure you was dead again.
Don't lose no time, Jim. Just shove off for the big water as fast as ever you can.
I never felt easy till the raft was 2 miles below there and out in the middle of the Mississippi. It's lovely to live on a raft. We had the sky up there all speckled with stars, and we used to lay on our backs and look up at them.
What do you reckon, Jim? Were the stars made, or they only just happened?
I reckon they was made.
I think they happened, because it would have took too long to make so many.
Well, the moon could have laid them.
Think so?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I reckon that's reasonable. I've seen a frog lay most as many eggs.
Huck, see that?
Falling star, Jim. Streaking down.
I reckon that's a spoiled star. So it got holed out of the nest.
One morning about daybreak, I found a canoe and crossed over a chute to the main shore and paddled about a mile up a creek amongst the cypress woods to see if I couldn't get some berries. Well, here comes a couple of men tearing up the path as tight as they could foot it. I thought I was a goner, for whenever anybody was after anybody, I judged it was me, or maybe Jim. I was about to dig out from there in a hurry.
You there! Save us! We beg you! Help us! We ain't done nothing! They're after us, please!
Wait down to me and get in!
They done it, and soon as they was aboard the canoe, I lit out for our towhead. By the time we had left a mile of woods behind us and struck the river, we could hardly hear the dogs anymore.
You'll be safe in these cottonwoods. This is our raft. We can take you downriver.
Oh, bless you.
Oh, mighty kind, mighty kind.
Who they, Huck?
Don't know, Jim. You're being chased up near the creek.
I don't like it, Huck. I don't like it one bit.
You'll be okay, Jim.
What you gonna tell them about me?
I'll think of something.
It ain't safe, Huck. With these two rum-looking characters here, you and me ain't safe no more.
Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, adapted for radio by Marcy Cann. In the cast, Huckleberry Finn was played by Christopher Jacot, Jim was Martin Roach, Mark Twain was played by Mark Cavan, Child of Calamity was Randy Hewson, Davy was Jim Jones, and Bob was played by Lawrence Bain. Also heard were Wally Michaels as Colonel Grangerford, Nicky Guadagni as his wife, Buck was played by Amos Crawley, the Duke was James Key, and the King was played by Dennis O'Connor. Also in the cast, Jack Nicholson, Wayne Ward, Sean Matheson, Barbara Barnes, and Roy Lewis. The music was composed by John Roby, who also played the banjo. Script editor was Dave Carley, the casting director was Julia Tate, recording engineer was Greg DeClute, sound effects were by Wayne Richards. Associate producers were Michelle Parisi for the CBC and Eugene Murphy for the BBC. Toronto producers were Greg DeClute and Linda Grierson. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was directed in Toronto by BBC director Ned Chaillet. Executive producer for Canada was Damiano Pietropaolo. For Sunday Showcase, I'm Damiano Pietropaolo. Stay with us now for Katie Mallock and Jazz Beat on CBC Radio 1. Good night.